Hello, welcome to another live with me, Dr. Rosie Kuhn. Goodness, there's 3 people here already. Thank you, and nice to see you. If we could, put your say hello in the chat so I know actually who's here. There's 4 people here now. Well, thank you. That's awesome. Today, we're going to be speaking about. I'm going to be speaking about unforgiveness, as in what keeps us from forgiving other people, and what keeps us remaining in a state of unforgiveness. But first, I want to mention a couple of things. One is that the intentions of these live videos and all my work is to engage you in the direct experience of being you, whether that's in these conversations with me or in your everyday life. Because quite often we're so much in our heads or our emotions or in our stories in our past, or we're in our history or just someplace else. We actually aren't very often in the direct experience of being ourselves. And so quite often we don't even know who we are in here or what we are in here and how we really want to experience the world, how we experience the world and how we want to experience the world. Hi, Marge. Nice to see you. And so the intention of these lives and all my videos is to empower you, support and empower you to feel who you are inside, and in this specific hour, what it's like to be you in the experience of you while I am saying what I say, while you're hearing what you're hearing, while you're experiencing or feeling or sensing what you're sensing, so that we can actually have that engaged conversation. So when we can do that, then you learn so much more about you. And that's the most important thing here is to develop and cultivate that ability to have a relationship with yourself, through the direct experience of yourself. And so that's part of these conversations. And they're kind of difficult conversations. This one in particular, forgiveness, is not one of my strong suits in terms of my personal experience with forgiveness. So it's a challenge. These are challenging conversations, but they keep us in a dilemma between moving forward for ourselves, moving forward in developing an intimate relationship with ourselves, a whole relationship with ourselves, versus continuing to ignore and avoid and distract ourselves from these challenging conversations. These conversations are happening all the time inside you, I suspect, certainly inside of me. And then there's all of those dilemmas of trying to avoid and distract ourselves from these conversations. The challenge is if we don't make progress in these parts of our lives where we maybe have been holding on to unforgiveness to our parents or friends or teachers or people that harmed us in some ways, if we don't deal with that, then we can't up-level ourselves to the next level of fulfillment in our lives. So it's really important that we do this. Hi, Fred. Nice to see you. So if we don't make progress, then we don't make progress, and then we don't get to feel the fulfillment, experience the fulfillment, grow into and expand ourselves into the fulfillment of what we actually desire. We came here knowing that we're going to have some awesome expression of ourselves, and then we keep kind of staying low under the radar, uh, hoping we're not going to hit by some fire, bullet or person or whatever. We try to stay low, and that's part of this process of remaining unforgiving. Is it keeps us what we believe is what keeps us safe. So I think that's what I wanted to say about that. In terms of the intention is to bring greater degree of willingness for you to have a direct experience with yourself, in knowing yourself as a sovereign being, and how you choose to allow other people to influence how you be in the world, how you experience yourself, how you assess your own worth, how you take in life, how you're willing to receive life or not receive life, avoid abundance in a sense, not let it in for all of the reasons that we have for not letting that happen. Um, so, coming into our conversation for today, another intention of these is that if you have questions or thoughts in relation to what I'm saying or this whole conversation about forgiveness and remaining unforgiving, let me know, because that's really where I think things get really juicy, as opposed to me talking for the majority of the time, just saying what is for me. That's another thing, is like, I am just sharing with you, like I said, my direct experiences. I'm not here to pontificate what you should do. I'm just giving you an idea of, here's my experience, here's my sense of things, and for you to have the direct experience with what's occurring for you as I'm speaking, and then you can choose how you want to be with that. You get to choose and empower yourself to choose what to do with that information. You could just totally ignore it, or you might comment to me and say, I totally disagree with what you're saying. That would be awesome. Just that you have a specific perspective, and you can share that in these forums is, I think, a really great thing. And we get to learn from each other that way too. So forgiveness is one of those pillars of every religion. Hello, David. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining me. I know it's early Friday morning. Is that right, where you are in Australia? So welcome. Um, so forgiveness is one of those things that almost every religion and spiritual tradition talks about, that, you got to practice forgiveness. And yet I want to say it's one of the most difficult, I think, for people to truly practice. And it's because there's so many elements to the context of forgiveness. In a sense, so many people, I believe, I'll talk about it from my perspective, but my sense is, and in my working with other people, it's, if I forgive a person, first of all, forgiveness is about the other person. It's not about me. That's one belief, but is in a sense inaccurate. To forgive somebody is all about me. It's not about the other person. It's really about my relationship with myself in relation to that person, or that thing that happened, that circumstance, that event. So this is about each one of us in our abilities and capacities to experience trauma, experience disappointment, experience harm, experience violation and abuse. And what do we do about that so that we can go on and live a fulfilling life? And go on not as in managing, but how do we shift so that we come to full fulfillment? And so part of that, in terms of a context of forgiveness, is we think it's about the other person. That if I forgive the other person, then, and then we just fill in the blank. And quite often we think, if I forgive the other person, that gives them permission to do what they did to me again. And quite often, I don't know about you, but I know I lived in a family where there was a lot of broken promises. There was a lot of things that people said, and then they didn't follow through. No, there was so little consistency in terms of what people said and then what they did. So there were a lot of broken promises and disappointments, and a violation of trust and respect of each other. That was sort of the mainstay of our family life. And so in that process, it's like, if I don't forgive these people, they're my lifeline, and I'm dependent on them. I'm dependent on my parents for survival. And if I don't forgive them, in a sense, and if I just go off, run away, I'm probably not going to survive. But that's a part of the challenge that so many of us face, is that we possibly grew up in a house where there was a violation and a disrespect and a dishonoring of each other in lack of dignity. But we did not have any recourse in that because we're of our dependent nature. And so we felt victimized, and we felt oppressed and depressed. We felt like there was nothing we could do but just, in a sense, forgive and forget. and then go on with the the next time that it happened and the next time it happened. And so those patterns form in us because it's a part of the training and entrainment that occurs in us that, okay, if somebody does something wrong, or if somebody does something that harms me or violates me, I have no recourse. And so I just have to forgive them, let it go, and sort of get back into the ring and do more of that. So there's a lot of us that have that kind of dynamic. And for me, I carried that into my marriage, and then I carried it into every relationship I had, that was significant. Even with my children, it plays out a little bit because of the way that I learned that you can forgive, but that just means the other person's going to do it again. So that's a context that we have that makes forgiveness hard, as opposed to a lot of people don't want to forgive because it gives them a sense of empowerment. It gives them a sense of control. It gives them a sense of righteousness. It gives them a sense of I matter in the world, and so I am not going to forgive you because I matter, and the way that you treat me is that I don't matter. I won't divorce you, or I won't leave you, or I won't quit my job, but I matter enough that I won't forgive you. So that's part of what keeps us in the process of remaining unforgiving, is it gives us a sense of power. It gives us a sense of control in our life. And we can take revenge, and we can resent, and we can shame and blame from this place of unforgiveness. It gives us a sense of, of purpose. It gives us a sense of personness. And that can be really important to us, especially if we grew up in disempowered environments. But when we get to a place where we can go, no, I'm not going to let people treat me that way, but I'm not going to forget, and I'm not going to forgive, because that just sets up another moment of disappointment. So I'm saying that as that's how a lot of people feel about and experience this concept, this practice, spiritual practice, if you will, of forgiveness. So there's this relentless struggle to figure out, how do you do the spiritually right thing, the religious right thing of forgiving someone without disempowering yourself? That's a really, really good question, because again, the context being our thoughts and our interpretations and our assessments and our judgments about a certain element, this time it's about forgiveness, is such that it keeps us in a particular relationship with that thing. So if I forgive, if I believe, if when I forgive, I'm just going to get poked in the eye again, then I'm not going to forgive, right? But here are all these religions and spiritual traditions that say, oh, you got to forgive. And it's so difficult. So Marge says, can we forgive someone without letting them know they've been forgiven? Absolutely. In fact, that's probably the best way to do it. Because again, it's not about the other person. It's about, what is it that you gain by remaining unforgiving? And what do you lose by remaining unforgiving? So I realized, in terms of my two marriages, I realized that I have been holding on to a lot of resentment for 40 some years, right? Like, that's a long time to feel resentment. And what doesn't get to show up when I'm in resentment? What doesn't get to show up when I'm in blame and shame? What doesn't get to show up when I'm holding men, in this particular case, accountable for my lack of happiness? What can I bring into my life if that's what I'm holding, because I'm saying I'm going to remain unforgiving? So I started seeing how this commitment to remaining unforgiving really diminished my powers to be happy and fulfilled, and to also begin to allow that my choices about my choices in relation to men, or my choices that kept me in these disempowering relationships had in a sense nothing to do with them, had to do with how I'm being in the world, how I'm being inside this body, given the circumstances of, we'll say, past lives, childhood stuff, whatever. It's like, that's what I'm working on, is here's the programming that I came in with and I continue to play out. And it's like, wait a minute, this isn't working. This isn't working. And so I start to unpack all of that and find this place of, wow, as long as I remain unforgiving, I won't ever have a totally complete, fulfilling relationship with probably anybody, because I'll always be waiting for some level of abuse or a violation of an agreement. Like, I'll always suspect that that's going to happen. Now, of course, it always happens. I mean, um, people don't always fulfill their agreements. People break promises. People break commitments. That's what happens in life. And as we do that, other people get disappointed. And it's like, it's what happens. I broke agreements. Most people have broken agreements at some point, and how we handle that is how we handle it, and how the receiver of that broken commitment handles it. That's what we're dealing with. That's what we're dealing with. So we have 4 people here. Hello. And that somebody just left. You have these little numbers on the screen, and it's like, oh, there's 5 people here. Oh, there's 3 people here. I want to welcome you and say hello. And if you would say hello in the chat, I would love to know who's here as you're showing up. And if what I'm saying is of value, please like this video. And if you haven't all yet subscribed, it would be great if you would subscribe too. That would be great, because then I'd know if what I'm saying really makes a difference in people's lives, in your life, basically. So this challenge of forgiving, I'm supposed to be forgiving, I'm supposed to forgive you. And if we look at that, there's still a righteousness in this. I forgive you generally comes from a place of righteousness and control. I forgive you, and it's done in a diminishing way. You are less than I am, and I, as a more righteous person, will forgive you. That's not what true forgiveness is. But that's how most of us see it, is I am going to deem you forgivable. And it doesn't work that way. Thank you for the thumbs up. It doesn't work that way. What we want is through the experience of forgiveness, we experience compassion for ourselves and the other person. We experience love. We experience an openness to their humanity. We experience a humility in ourselves that goes beyond righteousness. Jesus said, while he's on the cross, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. And for me, I think about that a lot, and I use that a lot for myself, on myself and other people, because 99% of us are so unconscious about how our behavior is affecting other people, how it's affecting us, that they don't know what they're doing. So when we can come into a place of going, wow, he doesn't know what he's doing, then it gives us a sense of compassion. It's like when we are at a state of awareness where it's like, if I'm 18 years old and I'm watching some children play in a sandbox, they're 5 and 6, and they're throwing sand, and it's like not fun for them. I can go, oh, they're just kids. They don't know any better. And quite often in the consciousness of those people that we're associated with, they don't know any better. And you may have told them 55 times, and they're not getting the message. And it's like, okay, they're like 5-year-olds in the sandbox. They can't get it. But that's where we start taking responsibility for sticking around a sandbox full of 5-year-olds when in fact that's not serving us. In my second marriage, I stayed for a long time. We were together 12 years, and there were some really wonderful, great things about that person. And at the same time, I felt violated and resentment, and I was pissed off, and I was blaming, and it was his fault, and all that stuff. And at one point, I had to take responsibility for sticking around. I had to take responsibility for staying and being in a relationship that with an individual that did not respect his word, his agreements. He did not respect me enough to keep his word and agreement. He didn't respect himself to keep those agreements. But it was me who stuck around. And so then it became, can I forgive myself? Because so much of life on the planet is about where we're afraid that we're making mistakes, or we did make mistakes, or we did make agreements and then we broke those agreements. And so we're at fault as much as anyone. Fault is in we make mistakes, and we do the best we can, but we have to forgive ourselves. Otherwise, it's the same thing of holding on to the unforgiveness for whatever reason. And every single client, I think, just about that I've worked with has this challenge of forgiving themselves, that somehow it's better to hold on to the guilt and the shame of mistakes that they made, or they made mistakes, or they made choices that were harmful to themselves or other people, and they don't want to forgive themselves for that. They don't want to let go of the shame that they feel. And it's like, how does that serve us? So if you guys, David, I know you're here, and Fred and Marge, and if you guys could sort of share with me your thoughts about that, like how does that work for you? That would be really useful to me. I'm going to get a glass of water really quick while you're all writing, hopefully, something. Great. Thank you, Marge. Marge says, "Oh my God, can I forgive myself?" That question really hits home. So what is that about that question that really hits home? If you don't mind answering that, Marge, that would be great. One of the in Dave Hawkins' book, Healing and Recovery, he talks about this unconscious guilt that's with us so often, and we don't know it because we stay unconscious to it all. But when we start to unpack so much of what we're talking about here, these conversations help us unpack this stuff. As I'm working on and preparing for these conversations, it's like I have to unpack it for myself, because it's so personal. As I'm speaking it to you, this is so personal. Marge says, "I've been thinking I couldn't figure out who to forgive." Yes. Um, when we this is another one of those spiritual sayings, spiritual principles, perhaps. When we forgive ourselves, can forgive others. It happens so much more effortlessly if we can forgive ourselves. But this question that helped me and continues to help me is, what allows me to remain in unforgiveness? What do I get to keep and hold on to, and what do I avoid by remaining in unforgiveness? March says, "I had no grudges. To turn the spotlight inward is a whole new ballgame." Yay. Yay. Because that's what it's all about, right? The hokey pokey. That's what it's all about, is turning the question, turning the spotlight inward, so that we can all be, each of us be more conscious of how we treat ourselves, how I treat myself individually, and how that then shifts how I be in the world. even though I had been a therapist, and even though I was the spiritual guide and a coach and all these kinds of things, and while I'm with clients, it can be I'm very intimate and intuitive and connected. In my personal life, maybe not so much, and I go unconscious, or I go into assumptions that I'm conscious of what other people's reality, so that I'm sensitive to that. But maybe not. Maybe I'm not. I don't know. But my point is that even though I'm this specialist and professional, um, I still have all of this stuff inside that not only influences how I be a therapist, but how I be a mom, or a partner, or a friend, um, a person on the planet. So again, asking the question, I keep coming back to the question, because that way I can stay focused on what we're talking about today. Uh, in a sense, like, uh, when I remain in unforgiveness, then I get to feel invulnerable. And when I remain in unforgiveness to myself, then I become, so you can see that as I'm saying this, this is like true from like this moment forward. I don't have this written down. Even if I did, I still have to be in this experience, in this direct experience, in this moment as I'm being with you, in a sense that if I forgive myself, then I might be vulnerable to attack. If I go, oh yeah, I was a bad person, or yes, I made mistakes, or yes, I hurt people by my decisions, then I've got my armor. So if you throw those arrows, I'm already protected. I go, yeah, I know. No, I did that. Yeah, I know. So it's like a way of keeping from being harmed, versus if I let that go, and this takes practice, this takes conscious practice of this process of going, what am I dismantling here? And can I do this in a way that keeps me safe within myself? Um, this takes practice. But knowing armor, even though it feels like it's protecting me and I feel invulnerable within that armor, it also keeps me from having an authentic relationship with my children, or potential partners, or with life, or with prosperity. Because 99% of the time, if I'm holding guilt and shame, then I'm holding unworthiness. And if I'm holding unworthiness, then I'm holding bad things happen to me and good things don't. So that's a general snippet, but that's basically how we operate, is a level of worthiness. And if I hold on to that, I feel safe, but all the wealth and prosperity, or the fulfillment, or the love and the health, well-being, joy, can't come in, because I'm protecting myself. So we're armoring, but we're also not not able to bring the good stuff in. This is part of one of those. This is a dilemma. When we talk about spiritual dilemmas, this is a dilemma. We want to stay safe, or feel safe, experience safety, and at the same time we want to be open, and in a sense return to innocence, where we can feel safe again in the world. And this takes a lot of practice, because we've learned over, for me, decades, for all of us, decades, because anybody who's listening to this has at least been on the planet probably at least 2 decades. So we've been training ourselves to be invulnerable, and also that keeps us from being able to truly be intimate and be safe while we're being intimate. March says, I remember a moment in my childhood when I did something so embarrassing. Yes, tell more. Um, so so the other element of forgiveness that I want to bring in is the element of worthiness. Is the concept I think I may have mentioned this last week. The concept of worthiness, I tried to avoid it even in my work, because even though it's the essential way we express ourselves, or don't express ourselves, I wanted to get to it from different ways, as opposed to going, well, there's a worthiness issue. It's always a worthiness issue. March says, that she remembers doing when she did something embarrassing. I could never tell anyone until the day after I had my own children and a new perspective. I remember what I did and saw the entire incident with compassion. That was the moment of forgiveness, and now I can tell that story as a sweet childhood moment. Great. Yeah. Is there's those times where we can see things differently, and it opens up an opportunity to let go of the shame and the embarrassment, the humiliation, those senses of being less than, and begin to, like you said, appreciate the moment as a sweet story. I don't know why we think everybody has a perfect life and that nobody else makes mistakes. Nobody else breaks promises. Nobody else has the same issues that we have, but everybody has the same issues. It's one of the elements of being a human being is that most of us are struggling with the same universal challenges. And but we don't see other people struggling. And that again is why it's important for us to have these kinds of conversations where we go, wow, how does that feel when I think about, much like what you said, Marge, is like, wow, forgive myself. Wow, that's a whole new ballgame. It's like, wow, Marge, you had an experience, a direct experience of you. And it's like, wow, oh, there I am. I got, and you start to go, I need to have that conversation with myself. And those are the things that I want to um, keep supporting and empowering you to experience for yourself as I'm speaking. My truth is what's your truth, and how does that land for you? The challenge too in this is that, as I've said before, one of the intentions of these lives is to keep it really simple, like the hobby of spirit keeping, the hobby of, the elementary sense of how do we do this thing? But at the same time, we are a multidimensional person. There's the child in the sandbox part of us, the physical person that doesn't know, they're just doing what they're doing. And then at the point where we go, oh, wait, there's a thinking person. I can think. And that's different than the part that's automatic. And then there's the emotional part. Oh, I have feelings that are different from my thinking, that's different from my physicality, that's different from the spontaneous being that's just doing stuff. And then there's an awakening to a consciousness. Oh, so this consciousness, wow, I can see myself think. It's the witness. I witness myself think. I witness it myself feel. I witness myself sense. I witness myself express. So now we've got this other dimension of consciousness. And there's more, right? Excuse me. There's more. And so as I'm trying to keep this simple, there's all the complexity of, wait a second, because I was taught, or I always thought that forgiveness meant it was about the other person. They get you, you let them off the hook, they're done, and that's it. And it's all of these elements of what we didn't question and what we haven't questioned about ourselves or reality. What is true for you about forgiving? What is true about remaining unforgiving? What is it you get to experience when you can let go of the unforgivingness? I wrote a book. Let's see if it's here. I'll just show you the picture because I wrote a book called the Unholy Path. The Unholy Path. I don't know if it comes up backwards, but it's the unholy path of a reluctant adventurer. So most of us can't go forward by saying, okay, I'm going to practice this. I'm going to practice this. I'm going to practice this. We want to, and we somehow think that's what you should do. But most of us, and David Hawkins is a huge proponent of this, is you just have to stop doing what doesn't work. And so for me, looking at what keeps me in a state of unforgivingness, that I can look at. I can't, it's like, I should forgive that person. 20 years later, I should forgive that. 40 years later, my parents, 80 years, whatever that is, I should forgive them. And it doesn't work that way for me. But if I look at it from the reluctant adventurer person who says, okay, here's what I'm holding on to. I'm holding on to unforgiveness. Okay, what's that about? Then I can work with it and I can dismantle it little by little by little. Can make sense of that versus making sense of this concept that it never worked for me. Forgiving my mother over and over and over, or anybody else of that relationship over and over and over, it didn't work. So I don't know how to do forgiveness, but maybe I can learn how to do unforgiveness. Maybe I can learn how to undo the unforgiveness. That's so I just offer that to you because that's kind of the way I work. And a lot of the people that I work with as my clients, they go, "Oh yeah, I totally get how I'm doing that," versus I can't make that forgiveness thing work. Yeah, can't do it. Okay, great. Let's kind of back up a little bit and look at the underside or the backside of things. That kind of helps a lot, I think. Marge says, she says, also a simple apology can be very freezing. Freezing, sorry. A simple apology can be very freeing. If I notice I've overstepped my bounds, I can apologize. And even when the other person didn't notice, I feel infinitely better. Oh, great. Thanks. The book shows up correctly. Great. But yeah, it's huge to own your mistakes. And it's a huge part of the 12-step program. Any 12-step program is making amends. And before you do that, you take an inventory. So I believe let me just sort of stop there for a second. I believe every single one of us is an addict. We may not be addicted to substances, but we are addicted to the patterns of being, which creates the need to go to substances. Why we have restless, irritable discontent or anger, or frustrations, and we don't want to feel. We don't want to have that direct experience with ourselves. So we engage in eating or drinking or smoking or sex or pornography or retail therapy, whatever that is. We're all addicts in that. And we're addicts to shame, and we're addicts to guilt and unworthiness. We're addicts to so many patterns of being in ourselves that we don't even know it. And so conversations like this hopefully helps us become conscious of like, oh wow, I do that. And we get more conscious and aware, and then we can start to make changes. So part of the 12-step program is making an inventory of where I have harmed people, how I've harmed people or myself. Now, I think it's the fourth step where you start to make an inventory. A lot of times people make an inventory related to a specific person or specific situation so that they can get clear about where did I contribute to the situation? Where was there a wrongdoing on my part? Where was I out of integrity? Where was I not respectful of myself or the other person? So that inventory really helps and is necessary to a degree for people who are really needing and wanting to cultivate that awareness. So a person who's doing a fourth step, the inventory, they have to become conscious and witness their thinking, their actions, their emotions, their speaking. They become conscious in witnessing themselves in that way. And they write it down. Here's where I did A, B, and C, and D, and F. When the whole time that I was really angry at my mother, I was kind of a bitch. I was even at 11 years old. I was righteous, and I was pissed off, and I was bitter. I was not a nice person to be around. And until I owned that, it was like I made my mother the bad guy. But man, I was rough on her, I'm sure. And so she had every right to be pissed off at me. But we never got to talk about it. We never got that wasn't the kind of relationship that we had in our family to talk about what's really going on. And so being able to take inventory of, okay, so much like with my ex-husband number two, is to say, okay, so he kind of did all this stuff, but what did I do? Oh, I stuck around and I was righteous and I was resentful and I kept making him the bad guy and I would withdraw and withhold. Those are things that I was doing. And to own that is a really good thing. And that's really challenging for so many of us because we think, oh, everybody else in the world, they don't do those things. It's only me that's the bad guy here. And so we feel humiliation and we feel like we're gonna die because we're such a bad person. But every single one of us on the planet, that's why 12-step programs are so powerful. They're all over the world. Billions and millions of people at least have gone through and have been supported by a 12-step program. So my point is that in being able to do an inventory, but then go and say, I'm sorry. It heartfelt. It's like I truly own that I made these mistakes, or I made this agreement and broke or whatever it is, that when we can own it, it clears it for ourselves. We're not holding on to the lies. We're not holding on to the resentments. We're not holding on to pretending that we're better than. We're owning, I'm human. And as a human being, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do me. And so I fucked up and I was a horrible person at that time, or whatever that is we get to own it. And when we own it, then it's complete. It's complete. And that brings tears to my eyes to say, yeah, it's really about completing so that we're not carrying that with us. When I was doing a little research on, I hardly give myself a moment to breathe because I'm afraid I'm going to forget what I'm going to say. um, but went through when I was doing research on forgiveness, and there was a piece in the Mayo Clinic's online website talking about the benefits of letting go, and in a sense that by holding on, we create bitterness and anger. We're holding on to not only holding on to the bitterness and anger from the past relationships, but we then engage the new person, a new relationship, a new event with that. It's still there. It hasn't gone anywhere. And we have to ask ourselves, what do I really want? And that's why in my coaching, number one question I work with my client thoroughly on is, what is it you want? I want a relationship with somebody else. Excellent. Tell me about that. Well, I've let go of all the past and I really want to move forward. It's like, excellent. Because as long as we are carrying any of the past with us, we're all carrying the past with us. If we don't let go of that, if we're not conscious of that, then we carry those patterns, those unconscious patterns of guilt, unworthiness. That person's going to screw me over to, thoughts, unconscious thoughts. We carry that into the next relationship, and we're always anticipating the the next event. Aha! He did it to me too. She did it to me too. And we carry that with us and we create it. We know that, we've heard this many, many times, we create our own reality with our beliefs. And so if we don't become aware of what those beliefs are, if we're not conscious of, wow, that pattern exists in this relationship, just like it did in every other relationship. It's like, well, what are you still holding as a belief about yourself and the world? And when we can see that, we can see how we construct the world based on that belief. We do. Now sort of science is just this is matter of fact in science and in all kinds of self-help processes. So if I'm carrying guilt, then I'm carrying in, I can't be fully available or fully receiving intimacy and love because I'm guilty of something. So the more that we become conscious about that, the more we can surrender and let go and say, I'm sorry, and move on. let that go so that I'm now open to a new relationship, a new abundance of relationships in all kinds of ways. And that's what we want. That's what I want. I want to know what life is like on the other side of grief and guilt and shame and unforgiveness. I want to know what that's like. How about you? What do you want to know about? I'm open to hearing more if you guys are here. So who else just has joined us? We've got four people here. If you can say hello, that would be great. And I appreciate the 4 thumbs up. That makes me really happy. Thank you very much. So I was making a point that the Mayo Clinic was talking about the importance and the health benefits of forgiveness. When we carry, I'm just looking to see if there's anything specific. But when we carry unforgiveness, we're carrying bitterness, resentment, shame, guilt. We're carrying it's a level of stress hormones, testosterone, and all those kinds of things. We're carrying that, which creates inflammation, which creates dis-ease in our bodies. And so if we look at it that way, so that's why obviously it was in the Mayo Clinic website, is like, hey, here's something that we can look at that can help minimize the stress and the damage that we do to our bodies by holding on to unforgiveness. We can go, okay, this isn't good for me. I got to let this go. I don't want to, I don't know about you. I used to think that this was normal to have this level of dread and despair, sadness, victimizing, guilt, shame. This was normal. I'm going like this because this was normal. And then the more that I do practice self-help stuff, the more that I've written about it in my different books, the more that I write about it, the more I distinguish the stuff that's not necessary. The more that I read books like Joe Dispenza's book, I am the Marge, what's the name of that book? I am the placebo. I am the placebo. The more that I read those, then it confirms the new way that we're knowing, the new knowing that I am the placebo. In a sense, I create my wellness and my health and my vitality, my prosperity. I used to be what they call the nocebo. Thanks, Marge. The nocebo is the negativity that creates negative reality, a negative experience in life. The nocebo creates, if you tell a person this is going to hurt, if a doctor puts a shot and you go like, this is going to really hurt, it's probably going to hurt a whole bunch more than if the doctor says it's not going to hurt at all, just a little pick. It's because it's it's what we do with that. We create the negativity that creates negativity. So I have been the nocebo in my life for a very long time. I've created a lot of negativity in my life, and I realized that's what's the point of that? And I have become a professional, not getting paid to do that, but I am masterful at being a nocebo and living a negative life. Don't want to do that anymore. I want to cultivate and learn and train myself how to be the placebo, the positivity in my life, the elements of life that will bring me more positivity, more abundance of fun and joy and playfulness and connection with people. And I have to do the training. I have to do the work. I have to do the self-exploration to say, okay, so where have I yet to forgive myself? Where have I been holding and continue to hold myself as unworthy of forgiveness? That's a huge piece of our reality. The consensus view of reality is having been disrespected, dishonored, taken, our dignity has been taken away. Very few of us have a family life that continues to flourish and bring thriving energy to every individual in the family. It's very rare to have a sense of worthiness, not from arrogance, but from true sense of my worth because I am. And because I am, I have full potentiality in the world. Um, I have to deal with lifetimes of the guilt and lifetimes of disappointment and lifetimes of junk, and to diminish and get rid of that nocebo way of living, and say I'm gonna start being the placebo. I'm gonna start creating the positivity of that. So I say to myself, unforgiveness. You've been holding on that. What benefits you from that? Okay, keeps me armored, keeps me righteous, keeps me giving me a sense of empowerment. It's like, what would you gain by letting that go? What is it you really want? And so I go, if I let go of my unforgiveness, wow. I mean, I just feel like the whole thing just goes whoosh, and I can go like this momentarily and go, I am free of that. And it's playful. I'm playful and joyful and connected, and I don't have all this stuff. So my body lightens up. There's less density. There's less dis-ease. That's what I want. I don't want any disease. I don't want any pain. I don't want any of that emotional stuff that I thought was normal, that every single one of us had to have. Now, a lot of times I'll say that, and people will go, well, you should be afraid because it's important to be afraid. And, or, guilt's an important thing because it keeps people in alignment. So people have interesting perspectives about that. And it's true that fear is not 100% bad. It keeps us from, dangerous situations. But if you look at the 99% of the time that you use fear where it's not a survival issue, then you can go, oh, I can let go of a lot of that. And so it's where we can let go of stuff. Maybe you can't let go of it 100%. I mean, it takes time and time and time. It takes training and practice to go, can I let go of that? Do I need to be afraid of that? Does that really make a difference? Is that really true? And what I'm making up in my mind true? Or is that a fantasy? So anytime we say, what if this is going to happen? What if this is going to happen? We're making up a story. We're making up a story. And that 99% of the time, we're thinking it in terms of fear. What if he does this? And what if he says that? Or what if this? And what if I get fired? Or what if and the fear factor is totally made up. And this is where we're addicted to fear. The addiction cycle, I'm giving you so much information, probably way more than you really want, but the addiction cycle starts with fantasy, like a person that's been sober for a while. They're doing great, and then they go, wow, what if I had a beer? What if I went to the bar and hang out with my friend? What if? And the fantasy begins the process, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, just one. So we do this with fear all the time. It's addictive. It's addictive. It's addictive to go, what if he says this, or what if she does that, or what if I don't get? And it starts, I can feel it in my body immediately. The adrenaline starts to rise, and the tension starts, and the stress. And now I'm scared, and now I'm anxious, and now I'm worried. Last night just before going to bed, I got an alert from Apple saying, somebody is da 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 in your passwords. And I went, like, oh no, I gotta go to bed. And somebody's gonna hurt me. What if they? And it was like, wow, I'm making this all up. Yeah, something may be going on, but my understanding is that Apple is taking care of it, and that's all. And I'm going to bed because I can't do anything about it anyway. But there's this part of me, this strong part that goes to, just addictively goes into this, oh my God, what's going to happen? If we can stop that, then we begin to train ourselves to be the placebo. I don't want to go to bed with that kind of fear and anxiety. Okay, so what am I going to think? What am I going to generate for myself? That's being the placebo. What am I going to generate for myself? How do I do that? And we do that by saying, I can let go of this, unless I don't want to let go of it. What do I get by holding on to the anxiety and the worry? What do I get from hanging on to the anxiety and the worry? What do I get from creating the what ifs? What do I get? And when I ask those kinds of questions, I see what I'm doing. I see what I'm doing. And then I can say, you don't have to do that. And now I'm at choice. So again, we're talking about, that when we're in a state of unforgiveness for however long, with however many people in the world, in our lives, in our families, in our businesses, organizations, or whatever, when we can look at that and go, how am I remaining unforgiving? And what do I get by remaining unforgiving? That question in itself gives you choice to say, I really need to hold on to that because I'm afraid that I won't be respected for myself. It's like, okay, great. That's a good thing to know. And this is why it's good to have a life coach or transformational life coach or spiritual, because it's like sometimes we need a thinking partner to help us work that out. Like right now, that might be true. I need to remain unforgiving because I need to have that sense of protection. And this helps. It's like, okay, great. Good to know, because now you're at choice consciously and you can proceed consciously about that, as opposed to staying in ignorance and going, oh no, it's their fault and I'm not gonna buy into blah blah blah. So we get to be a choice, and that's part of what I want in these conversations, is so that you can start to experience the truth of yourself, so that you can begin to look at, oh, that's just a thought. When I go to what ifs, that's a whole fantasy world. It's like there's no truth in any of the what ifs. None, because nobody can know the future. So we're making it up. And we're making it up, and it makes us sad or angry or upset, and we already become unforgiving of what's going to happen, because we just got violated by our own fantasy. And it doesn't necessarily have to happen that way. It doesn't have to happen that way at all. We just are so programmed. We've programmed ourselves to be this way. And if we programmed ourselves to be this way, we can program ourselves to do it differently, to be the placebo in our life, to be the generative, the generativeness, the generative or the generator of flourishing and love and love, love and love and love and love, and delight. We have just a couple of more minutes. Any What's the big takeaway for you today? If you could put that in the chat, that would be great. Or if you later would like to put it in the comments, that would be awesome too, to let me know what's been valuable. What's the big takeaway for you in my sharing today? And if you have any questions that I can answer for you, please leave those in the comments below, and I'd be happy to answer those. So 5 people, thank you for being here. And if you haven't already liked this video or subscribed and you would like to do that, that would be awesome for me. It helps me know that what I'm saying is valuable to you, and it makes a difference to you as well. All right. Any last words? All right. Well, thank you again for being here with me, and I'll see you next week, I hope. All right. Bye for now.